that profit off of Israeli apartheid or the occupation and divest from those companies. That's the clearest demand that I've heard all week while covering these encampments, and I do believe that that's kind of the only way that this can be solved.
What do you say to those who say that this is not the right way to raise your voice against what's happening in Gaza, that it needs to be done in a way that does not affect the daily life of universities?
Every day an American bomb falls on a child in Gaza, and rubble fills a child's mouth for his last breath. And I don't think encampments on colleges are the real problem here.
Tell us more.
Well, the U.S. is funding this war that Israel is waging, and our taxes pay for these bombs, our taxes pay for these bullets, and these students understand that. They understand that we are inextricable from this war. Without American backing for the weapons, then Israel would take a huge loss and have to rethink what they're doing. And students want to cut off that supply and make a real dent into the war machine that is Israel. And I think an encampment is a very easy way to, or not easy way, but an encampment is a very effective way to bring awareness to the situation.
Ben, you were talking about the demands of the protesters, and of course, while demands from protesters vary at each university, the majority of demonstrations have called, as you said, for the divestment from companies that support Israel and the war in Gaza. Knowing what you do at UCLA in Los Angeles, can you see that would ever happen?
I mean, it can happen. Will it ever happen? I don't know. I mean, I could have hope. I want to say yes, that it can happen. But I don't. I mean, I don't know how far, how embedded UCLA, the UC system, or other colleges are with companies like Boeing or BlackRock or Raytheon. I mean, it sounds like there's considerable investment into these companies. I could be wrong, but for students to demand that their tuition not go to these companies, I think is a reasonable step one to for divestment.
Ben, it's important having you there. We do appreciate it, telling us what's going on within the encampment at UCLA. If you hang on there for us, if you would. So it has just gone encampment amongst the protesters, 400 or so protesters right there. So Ben, what are you seeing now?
Hey, yeah, so the area where the officers were pushed out, it looks like they put the barricades back up. And then there is also now an area on the side where, at the main entrance of Royce Hall, where protesters are gathered outside with shields. I think they may have heard some pounding on the door or something. They believe that there are police officers inside the building that may try to come out of those doors. Aside from that, everything has kind of returned to normal inside of the camp. I see people sitting, talking, drinking water, and just kind of calming down from the earlier happening.
What we see, Ben, is hundreds of protesters making their voice heard, but what we don't fully appreciate just looking on is the degree to which this is orchestrated and organized within the protest movement. Tell us about that and how social media plays a role and how everybody's communicating with each other.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been a part of a couple chats where people just post updates throughout the whole day, asking for supplies, asking for whether it's food or any other types of donations, camping supplies, medical supplies, and people bring them. They'll meet their quota for the supplies. They'll have too much, and then they'll transfer the inventory of supplies to a different area if they have too much inside of the camp. And they're extremely organized. That was one of the first things that I picked up on once I got here in the afternoon for the UCLA encampment. I could see donations clearly going in through one entrance and people going in through another side, and they kept the flow of movement going. The organizers, I mean.
The protesters clearly showing a great deal of solidarity, very determined. But are they ready for this to get out of control? Are they ready to face up to the violence that might actually happen if things do spiral?
I don't get that sense from them. I think that they will take a defensive approach to their encampment, but I do not see them, attacking or getting violent. I only see them defending. So, and even with the earlier, when LAPD was in here, all they did was just walk towards them and push them back. I didn't see any types of attacks or anything like that. It's just, you push them back and that's it. They walk back.
All right, we'll leave it there for the moment. Ben Camacho, do appreciate that, freelance journalist there within the perimeter of that encampment there at UCLA, observing events there, which has kind of gone back to a standoff situation. We did have police officers within the encampments for protests against the war in Gaza appear to have partially withdrawn from an encampment at the University of California in Los Angeles. Authorities had ordered them to disperse, but the students have been defying those calls. They're not moving. On Tuesday night, Palestine solidarity protesters were attacked by a group of Israel supporters. Police have been criticized for a delayed response to that attack. Let's get the latest idea of what's happening within the encampment. There's about 400 protesters at the encampment at UCLA, just the other side of the building we're looking at right there. And we can speak to freelance journalist Ben Camacho, who's within the encampment on the UCLA campus. And Ben, what's the latest that you're seeing and hearing?
Yeah, so right now they're issuing another dispersal order. This is probably the sixth one that I've heard today or tonight. But protesters have largely just kind of gone back to tending to the camp and really just occupying this space here in front of Royce Hall. There is a small group of protesters that did reinforce some barricades for the main doors of Royce Hall. But other than that, people are just, occupying the space just as before the cops showed up.
So it sounds like the protesters are resolute. They have no intention of moving despite police orders.
That's correct. That's actually the first thing they said when they pushed back LAPD. They told them that they're not leaving.
Tell us why there's such a degree of solidarity and determination to hold their ground and to make their voices heard.
Well, I think these protesters feel a very strong connection. And I mean, I spoke to someone who is from the West Bank and has family in Gaza. And, thankfully their family hasn't been completely bombed out of existence, just like many other families who we have, read reports that their entire lineage is completely bombed out of existence or killed in this war. And so I think these protesters are seeing what's going on and seeing that they are tied directly to it through the UC system, which does invest in certain companies that do profit off of the Israeli occupation. And they just want to take control of where their money goes. And so aside from the divestment acts, I think, there's many Palestinians here, Palestinian Americans, that are from the diaspora. So they could have family over there, or maybe it's all of the families here, but obviously they're originally from over there. And so to see their homeland being bombed, and, Rafah is the last place where civilians are living right now. And, as I'm hearing in your own reports that there's been Israeli attacks on those just in the past 24 hours. And I think this issue is very pertinent to this community here.
The thing is, of course, there will be those that say that this has been declared an unlawful assembly. As you say, the police have ordered dispersal orders 6 times. Is it right then to break the law and cause such disruption to make voices heard?
I mean, I don't want to speak for the protesters, but I do know that killing civilians is a war crime, and that's something that these protesters are speaking out against. So if they feel strongly enough that that they have to break the law to get the message across, then I think that speaks to the larger issue that the government isn't listening to protesters, and they have to resort to these types of means. So just a quick update, I am seeing protesters at the doors of Royce Hall. They are yelling into a door. I'm not sure what's happening, but I would imagine that police are right behind those doors.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Ben, what we're looking at right now is a bus load of police in riot gear have just arrived. You see them well, actually, there's another bus. There's two buses you can see now, and a third, and maybe more beyond that, all, I think, with riot police on board. It seems that the police are arriving in very large numbers and congregating just outside the building on campus there. Let's cross to Rob Reynolds to see if he's got a better view of what's going on or has heard anything more. Rob, what are you seeing? It's Rob Reynolds.